用呢個公民抗命嘅方法同政府講，我哋市民係唔滿意你啦，希望呢樣嘢令到政府係聽市民嘅意見，亦都希望能夠令到更加多嘅香港市民呢能夠去知道呢一樣嘢係行出嚟去爭取普選、爭取民主嘅。
Opposition demonstrators and security guards have clashed violently near Phnom Penh's Freedom Park. The protesters were demanding that authorities reopen Freedom Park to the public. Cambodia's Interior Ministry said in a statement that at least 38 security personnel were injured in the clash, 3 of them critically. The human rights group Likado told RFA that at least 17 security guards and 14 protesters were injured. The violence started when protesters hung a banner reading "Free the Freedom Park" to a razor wire barricade surrounding the site. Police fired smoke bombs to disperse the demonstrators.
We are asking that Freedom Park be reopened. All Cambodians and those who love democracy, please gather here. We come with peaceful intentions.
Following the violence, Musa Kwa and 3 other opposition lawmakers were arrested. They are charged with inciting violence and face up to 2 years in prison.
I'm saddened that both sides use violence against each other. But if Freedom Park continues to be closed, it means that the democratic process in Cambodia is in freefall.
Authorities banned political demonstrations in Freedom Park in January. The park had become a focal point for protests against Prime Minister Hun Sen's rule following disputed elections last year.
Police on Thursday lathi-charged on students of Patna University who were staging a protest demanding hostel facility in the city's Dak Bangla area. Police tried to disperse the crowd using force, thereby ensuing a clash between them and the students. Meanwhile, Patna DSP Mamta Kalyani said that the police were just trying to disperse the crowd.
उनकी कुछ मांगे थी, तो मांगे तो वो ये करने के लिए और वो लोग जाना चाह रहे थे, लेकिन वो इधर से प्रतिबंधित एरिया से ही पार होना चाह रहे थे, जिसे पुलिस ने रोका, तो वो इंस्पेक्टर कोतवाली से ही उलझ गए। उनका ये विजिल कॉर्ड और जो कॉलर था पकड़ लिया और उन्हें मारने की कोशिश की। लाठीचार्ज नहीं हुआ है, बस उनको खदेड़ा गया।
Correspondent Aditya from Patna for ANI.
UPSC students took the capital by storm, intensifying protests against the CSAT. The students demand that the prelim test should be held in regional languages, sparking off a political war over the language.
A day after the protest by UPSC students turned violent, the issue was raised in both houses of parliament.
सारी दुनिया में देखेगी आप, अपने देसी भाषाओं में ही काम हो रहा है, वही देश आगे तरक्की कर रहे। जैसे हम चाहते भारतीय भाषाओं का उत्थान किया जाए और
The protesting students though refused to budge from their stand.
Why I am here, why I am with protesters, because this is class struggle. The kind of teaching government is providing to poor students, the kind of questions they are asking, huge difference you will see in there. It is not A plus B ka whole square. It is social reasoning, it is social engineering.
The Prime Minister has been briefed about the intensifying protest, but the government said a final action is dependent on the committee report.
The police chief there has now been transferred 2 weeks after a 6-year-old girl was raped in her school premises in the city. Raghavendra Auradkar has, however, said that he cannot explain why he was transferred.
And today a delegation of parents will meet the school authorities, after which parents will decide on sending their kids back to school. Remember, the school has been shut since Thursday. Now, Anna Isaac is tracking that story closely. She's joining us live from Bangalore. Anna, we've seen the first administrative fallout of that rape that happened 2 weeks ago. The Bangalore Police Commissioner has been transferred, but today the parents of students who study in that school will be meeting school authorities.
That's right, Neha. Many are questioning this transfer of Bangalore's top cop, wondering whether the government is essentially trying to pass the buck for their own failures at preventing crimes like these that take place in the city. With regard to this particular meeting that's going to take place later today between the parents and the school management, remember the school has been closed for almost a week now. Parents are insisting that the school remain open. It should not be closed. There are several sections of the public here believe that that particular private school should be shut down. So the parents, however, say that their children go to their school, they're enrolled in school. What happens to their future? So they essentially want the management to ensure the safety and security of the children who go there. In fact, the parents even met the Home Minister yesterday, also met the Education Minister. The government has says that they're considering criminal action against the school management, but they promise that this will not affect the students who are actually enrolled at the school.
Right, Anna. So you are saying that the parents want action taken against the school authorities. What can we expect on that? Any developments that we can expect today? Will the government act?
Well, the government has been, the government said yesterday, in fact, in the assembly, that they would consider criminal action against the school management for essentially trying to hush up the crime for being negligent. And so we should expect developments with regard to maybe an FIR that will be filed later on today. But however, the parents insist that they don't want the school to be closed down. Back to you, Arunadeh.
All right, Anna Isaac, thanks very much for getting us that quick update. We'll come back to you in the day ahead as well.
Breaking news coming in: protests over college fee hike in Sikkim has gripped Gangtok.
That's right. Violence was reported now from various parts of the city, and even the main hospital. The Inspector General of Police was also attacked by protesters. This is the information that we are getting from the ground. His vehicle was damaged. Protesters are angry over a police lathi charge on students on Tuesday. The MLAs belonging to the opposition party Sikkim Krantikari Morcha are also on protest. The government has reversed the fee hike, but now the students protesting joined in also by the general public. They of course are unhappy over the way the police dealt with the situation. They are demanding justice. In fact, they are demanding resignation and suspension of an IPS officer who's the superintendent of police of that area, who is supposed to have led the lathi charge.
Right, and even as we try and get in touch with some people on the ground there, Karma, you've been tracking the situation from last evening, and you just also showed me a video that shows the kind of police brutality on the streets of Gangtok that is playing out.
That's right. As far as the police are concerned, Palki, they are telling us that this is the national highway. The road that you see where the students are protesting is the National Highway 10 artery as far as Sikkim is concerned. So they did not want that national highway to be closed for long. We are told the students held on. The national highway was closed for over 8 hours, after which the police was forced to act in a brutal manner. The Chief Minister of Sikkim, though, remains in Delhi. He's not been contacted as far as the media is concerned. We've been trying to get in touch with him. So this is the situation on the ground. So there's violence all over. The situation is tense right now. The entire city is shut down. Palki, important because this is one of the most peaceful states in India, and this is the peak tourist season. So a lot of tourists, at least about 70 to 80,000 tourists during the peak season would be here at this point in Gangtok. So they would be worried. Perhaps they would want to get out of Sikkim at this point. And also a message to all those heading to Sikkim, because this is the perfect time to go to Sikkim. You will need to check on the ground situation, especially if you're headed to Gangtok. Other areas, I'm told, other tourist areas, if you go to the west of Sikkim or to the east of Sikkim, remains untouched. But capital Gangtok, again, if you want to go to North Sikkim, so this area is to be avoided right now.
The discovery of a boy's body near Jerusalem has triggered clashes between Palestinians and Israeli security forces. It's feared that a missing Palestinian youth may have been killed in revenge for 3 young Israelis who were abducted and murdered. Protesters took to the streets in a Palestinian Arab neighborhood of East Jerusalem. Witnesses claimed a man beaten up by Palestinians was an undercover agent for the Israelis. This has not been confirmed. As the family of Mohammed Abu Qudaiya gathered, anxious for news, one relative said he'd been abducted by 3 men. Local residents in East Jerusalem claimed to have seen a teenager forced into a vehicle on Tuesday night. There's been no official confirmation of whether the body that was found was that of the missing 16-year-old, but a senior Fatah official is reported as saying that the missing teenager's family have identified the body, which was found in woods outside Jerusalem early on Wednesday. The Israeli cabinet is meeting to consider its response amid fears that right-wing extremists may have been involved.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has instructed the police to conduct this investigation expeditiously, to get to the truth of the matter as soon as possible. He's also called upon everyone to not take the law into their own hands and not to interfere in the police investigation.
Netanyahu was among tens of thousands of mourners who turned out for the funerals of the 3 murdered Jewish students on Tuesday. The UN Security Council unanimously condemned the killings and urged the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli government to cooperate in bringing the perpetrators to justice.
Clashes triggered by the abduction and murder of a Palestinian teenager spread from East Jerusalem to several towns in northern Israel on Saturday, as autopsy reports suggested that he had been burned alive. There are fears amongst observers that the escalating tension could spark the start of a third intifada. Our correspondent in the West Bank asked some Palestinians what they think. Indicators on the ground say no. There are many questions about our ability to resist. It's a difficult issue in Palestinian society. Do we have enough weapons or organisation for this? I don't think there'll be a third intifada. The situation is bad. Everything is blocked. We can't work in Israel anymore. The Palestinian cities are isolated from each other. I don't expect a third intifada. In West Jerusalem, members of the radical Israeli movement Lehava gathered to protest. Our correspondent there reports that the crowd was shouting "Death to Arabs" and "the whole of Israel for Jews." Nearby, a group of Israeli pacifists also rallied. A strong police presence kept the 2 groups away from each other, and no violence was reported.
There have been clashes between Palestinian youths and Israeli military late into Monday night in the West Bank town of Bethlehem. Protesters threw stones and fireworks in anger at the continued Israeli offensive against Hamas militants in Gaza. Local health officials say 180 Palestinians, many of them civilians, have been killed and over 1,400 wounded in the week-long conflict. A handful of Israelis have also been injured. As Hamas kept up its rocket attacks, there was the first reported use of a drone by Palestinian militants. It was shot down by Israeli military. And the United Nations peacekeeping force in Lebanon has called for restraint after 2 rockets were launched from the south of the country at Israeli territories. No one has claimed responsibility.
Thousands of Palestinians clashed with Israeli soldiers on Thursday night near the West Bank city of Ramallah. Palestinian protesters threw rocks at police and set piles of tyres on fire. According to a medic, one Palestinian person was killed and dozens more injured in the clashes. Gaza health officials report almost 800 Palestinians have been killed in fighting over the last 16 days.
A series of pro-Palestinian demonstrations have been held in cities across Europe in protest against Israel's military actions in Gaza. In Paris, an estimated 3,000 people took part in an unauthorized rally there. Some threw bottles and stones at riot police, who responded with tear gas. The event took place in defiance of the French authorities, who had banned it following a protest last Sunday that turned violent. In London, up to 15,000 demonstrators took part in a march from Downing Street to the Israeli embassy. In Brussels, some 2,000 people also took to the streets in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. The demonstration there was not authorized, but the police didn't prevent it and no violence was reported. Outside the UN building in Geneva, crowds gathered calling for the international community to do more to help stop the violence in Gaza. We're fed up with the UN talking and not doing anything. The world needs to rise up and say we've had enough of seeing people die. Israel says the offensive in Gaza is necessary to target a network of tunnels, which it says are being used by militants to launch attacks.
They sell that weapons to the Syrians. Every country who products these weapons and earns from this must destroy it. Why we must destroy it? Or near to us.
Σε αυτή τη δύσκολη και επικίνδυνη περίσταση, μια
On attend
trop depuis trop longtemps et maintenant il faut agir et on descend de manière très symbolique à la SNCM qui fait partie des gens qui bloquent et au même titre que l'État, ils sont responsables de nos situations respectives.
La presse a demandé de filmer comme ça, donc nous en avons fait. Donc passez, Je pense que maintenant on peut remonter tranquillement à la préfecture.
Employees from Italy's largest stainless steel plant blocked the country's main motorway for several hours on Thursday. The A1 runs between Milan and Naples and is the most important road in the country. Workers at the Terni plant in central Italy are angry at plans by German owners ThyssenKrupp to cut around 550 jobs and halve production. The plant is one of the most modern in Europe but has been making losses for several years. The company blamed it on the poor state of the market and says it wants to save €100 million in annual costs.
Protesters clashed with police in the province of Alessandria in Italy at a demo against the construction of a high-speed railway line. 3 were injured and many were treated for breathing problems after tear gas was used. The No-TAV group opposed the railway line which would eventually connect Genoa to Rotterdam.
African immigrants rioted in southern Italy, causing serious damage after 2 members of their community were shot. A private watchman and his son stand accused of attempted murder in connection with the gun attack in the town of Torri di Pesca Pagano. The migrants' injuries are not life-threatening.
Moroccan security forces have clashed with local people crossing into the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. The border had to be closed several times on Tuesday as officers struggled to contain a flood of citizens. Many Moroccans buy items in the Spanish territory, then return home to sell them.
10 people were arrested at Anumabo in the central region in connection with a recent rout between the Anumabo police and some youth of the town. The mob attacked the police post and vandalized property, running into hundreds of Ghana cedis. A policeman on duty, Inspector Daniel Beidu, was also assaulted by the irate mob. The Central Regional Police Commander, DCOP Ransford Ninson, described the incident as unfortunate and pledged the police administration's resolve to get to the bottom of the matter.
They vandalize them, they spot my room or they break something my room, they spoil everywhere.
The Central Regional Police Commander, DCOP Ransford Ninson, said they were informed that some angry youth at Anumabo had besieged the police post and vandalized properties. They also assaulted a policeman who is now receiving treatment at the Central Regional Hospital. He said on the 13th of July, the police embarked on a swoop and effected the arrest of some youth and retrieved some parcels of wrapped leaves suspected to be Indian hemp. Mr. Ninson said one of the suspected Indian hemp peddlers escaped into the river and tried to swim to avoid being arrested. Unfortunately, he drowned and his body washed ashore, which angered the youth who decided to take revenge on the police at Anumabo. Mr. Ninson said the incident is unfortunate but pledged to maintain law and order in the town. DCOP Moses Ninson also advised the youth not to take the law into their own hands since that violates the Public Order Act.
My advice to the general public is that they should stop vandalizing police stations. We are here to protect them. We are at their communities to give security to them. And so when such situations happen, they should rather help the police to ensure that whatever is to be done is done.
The Queen Mother of the Anumabo traditional area, Nanambro Badabu, condemned the incident and urged the youth to settle grievances or misunderstandings amicably rather than resorting to violence.
What I can tell them is people should not take the law into their own hands. And if anything, you should, cooperate with the police. Because these are the people who, protect us.
The protesters, made up of youths, barricaded the entrance of the Nekme office of the Benin City Electricity Distribution Company, demanding for the return of the transformer servicing their area at St. Saviour in Upper Sokpomba Road, Benin City. Some of the protesters said they have been thrown into darkness for the past 6 months after officials of the Benin Electricity Distribution Company removed their transformer for repairs. They said their protest was not only to call on concerned authorities to return their transformer, but to put a stop to the monthly feast charges.
We are lacking of light. Please, and there's no light. They are still coming to cut the light. That is our problem. To destroy, to share bill where we don't have transformer. To bring tell the NEPA to bring back our transformer, please. 6 months and 3 weeks. We are being darkness, please.
As we don't see Gala, so they will still bring 750 come out, see they pay. Upon all the most will not see the guidelines. We need light. We want pay. We want the money. If we don't have our light, we want to pay this thing. If we don't get light, make them not come. We don't want to see that. We need our transformer. That's 6 months. At least somebody would not use light for 6 months. It's not, at least you are a dead person. Even in the village said that you normally use light. Talk about we are in the town. No way to use light. We are there, everybody are suffering. Before you see burn of everybody come outside this morning to explain for light. I think you know there's something as a pain.
The public relations officer of the Ikpema business district of the Benin Electricity Distribution Company could not be reached. However, in a recent interview, the public affairs manager of the company, Mr. Curtis Wende, said the company is working hard to ensure that electricity supply is constant in Benin.
Times you are expecting your 2 hours to come in the next 2 minutes. Something with the light will go off. Instead of expecting yours to come, you'll see there's a fault on the line. That fault will not be clear for 2-3 days. And you discover that instead of 2 hours, you stay in darkness for another 8 hours. It's quite annoying. We go back to the board on. Let us see how quickly we can attempt to fault on that major line.
There have been series of protests from citizens over what they described as poor electricity supply to their areas. Best Mbire reporting.
The strike in the metal and engineering sector started peacefully enough. But that's changed. This CCTV footage was taken at an electrical company in Pinetown near Durban. Men in a nearby car first removed their red T-shirts before joining a group of protesters outside the gate. Together, they vandalized 7 of the company's cars and hurled rocks at some of the employees. In a few minutes, it's all over, and they flee. The owners of the company have chosen not to speak to us on camera, but say the business will be closed indefinitely. The directors are concerned about their employees' safety and say they'll also need to have their vehicles repaired. Later, similar armed mobs were marching through the Pinetown industrial area. Police watched closely for any signs of trouble. KwaZulu-Natal police spokesperson Tulani Zwane says several incidents of intimidation and violence have been reported, but no arrests have been made. NUMSA's regional secretary could not be reached for comment. But the Metal Workers Union has released a statement saying, NUMSA condemns the spurious accusations being made by employers that our striking members are involved in acts of intimidation and vandalism. Since the commencement of the strike, our members have exercised high levels of discipline and maturity.
Know more. ENCA.com.
First, workers storm the premises. They break through this gate. A fearful employee tries to escape this baying mob. Speeding, he crashes through the gate, sending it flying. His vehicle clips a passing truck. In another clip, strikers break open the gate of this building. Carrying sticks and other weapons, some dressed in red NUMSA shirts are seen toy-toying before setting alight this building, then flee the scene. In Victoria, Gauteng, strikers petrol-bombed several factory gates. Acts of intimidation and destruction to public property have once again marred this week's strike. NUMSA has denied their members are involved, but evidence on the ground suggests otherwise. A group gathered by a nearby railway station refused to speak to the media. The SABC's camera equipment was damaged.
If we allow these rotten elements who are trying to hijack the strike action through acts of violence and intimidation, it delegitimizes our genuine struggle.
This non-striking worker lives in fear.
Today they were just inside the platform, in the train, opening the bags. So we are scared because they identify us.
Factory owners have lambasted police for failing to protect them.
Don't make the South African industry the battlefield. Rescue the golden goose that laid the golden egg, and make sure that all the people have food on the table. And I appeal seriously, the police are really undermanned. The equipment that they have is not efficient.
The strike continues. Nozindombi Mia, SABC News.
The Education Department is expected to respond to the demands within the next 2 weeks. Gauteng's MEC for Education, Panyaza Lesufi, is expected to hold a meeting with the Congress of South African Students. 4 of the protesters are in hospital after being attacked by shop owners who accuse them of looting. The Department of Education says while it sympathizes with the students, it condemns their behavior during the protest. The students did not have permission to demonstrate in the CBD.
Know more. enca.com.
We are saying we are angry, we are unshaken, and we are going to strike.
Protest action, which soon spiraled out of control. Police arrested 12 students for public violence and for gathering illegally. A number of students were injured during clashes with police. The university is refusing to enroll students who owe more than 10,000 rand. The students say they want the National Student Financial Aid Scheme to settle their debts.
It does not make sense to us that in previous years and in previous semesters, students were able to register regardless of how much they owe, because NSFAS will pay for tuition.
Students have taken upon themselves to ensure that they close the university, they run the university uncomfortable.
The university is digging in its heels.
Students have to enter into a financial arrangement with the finance department, in which they then restructure the way that they're going to pay off their accumulating debt. And after that, they can then proceed with registration.
Arrested students are due to appear in the local magistrates' courts tomorrow. Police remain at the university. Vus Kumalo, SABC News, Umlazi.
A community frustrated by power cuts. They set alight 15 vehicles and damaged several more at this Eskom facility in Soweto. The vandalism prompted by continuous electricity cuts. It's not the first time the residents have expressed their anger over electricity outages.
Bayiqale kancane nje bese ngisigoslola mangiyobabuza njengenduna ngithi kwenze njani lebewucisha bewuvusa bathe begcina bawucisha nomphela bangabe sawuvusa.
Protesters say Eskom fails to communicate with them and they want to know what the problem is. The power utility blames cable theft for the problem and says the situation in the area is hostile.
We had open cases of malicious damage to property as well as public violence. However, it is not easy to trace and arrest those people, but we will do our best.
This is a sign of anger and frustration from hostel dwellers who say they are tired of being ignored by Eskom. They say they are sending a signal to authorities to take them seriously. Malungelo Boy, Soweto.
The 2-hour standoff began when taxi operators became enraged at a Metro Police operation at a local rank in Anderson Street. Operators say shots were fired earlier, and a taxi driver who was wounded has since died in hospital. Rocks were hurled at police vehicles, prompting officers to bring in reinforcements, and water cannons and gas was used to disperse the crowd. Trishni Subramani, East Coast Radio Newswatch.
Clashes between protesters demanding better working conditions for city transport drivers and police in Chile.
Las demandas se deben a los bajos sueldos, al exceso de trabajo, de 10 a 12 horas diarias.
Our demands are due to low salaries, too much work, 10 to 12 hours daily. Many times they make us work on our days off. They pressure us. What more can I say? That we are really tired of such abuses.
The Association of Trans-Santiago Workers called for the march, and students joined in to show their solidarity with the drivers. Demonstrators threw rocks while police fired tear gas and water cannon in efforts to disperse the crowds. At least 2,000 protesters turned out for the march through the main streets in downtown San Diego.
It started peacefully enough, Argentine car workers protesting against layoffs. But clashes on the Panamericana highway leading into Buenos Aires soon erupted as angry pickets confronted police. The auto part company Lear has announced mass redundancies, blaming them on the current recession. Unions say it's the fault of the government pandering to American companies in unpopular debt negotiations. This is happening because President Cristina Fernandez's government is doing business and negotiating with imperialists to pay the fraudulent external debt, and for this reason it has to maintain good relations with the American company owners. Argentina has until July the 30th to reach a deal with hedge funds suing for full repayment of sovereign bonds which the country defaulted on in 2002. It's been holding out, but the American Supreme Court, where the case was heard, ruled in favour of the funds. Payment will send Argentina into its second default in 13 years.
The first of thousands of squatters who transformed a half-built Venezuelan skyscraper into a vertical slum were moved out by armed soldiers Tuesday, marking the beginning of the end for the Tower of David's haphazard community. Police in riot gear and soldiers with Kalashnikov assault rifles stood on side streets as dozens of residents boarded buses for their new government-provided apartments in Cua, a town about 23 miles south of Caracas.
Now, for the first time in Guantanamo Bay history, a nurse has refused to force-feed a detainee participating in one of the ongoing hunger strikes at the prison. An unidentified nurse, who is a military lieutenant, declined to tube-feed a prisoner. And according to an attorney for the rights group Reprieve, who spoke to the Associated Press, the nurse saw force feedings as a criminal act. An Army spokesman said that the medical officer has since been assigned to other duties at Guantanamo and that the situation is being handled administratively.
24 protesters were arrested in Washington on Monday while demonstrating against hydraulic fracturing and the U.S. gas industry's push to sell fracked, liquefied natural gas abroad. Protesters blocked entrances to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's headquarters for more than 90 minutes, holding signs calling the agency the Fracking Expansion Rubber Stamp Commission and chanting, "Wake up, FERC." Monday's demonstration followed a larger march on FERC on Sunday against LNG exports and the proposed construction of an LNG export terminal and gas liquefaction plant near a densely populated residential area in Maryland.
In Utah, about 21 people were arrested after activists locked themselves to equipment and blockaded construction at the first ever tar sands oil mine in the United States. Utah Tar Sands Resistance said about 80 people joined the action against the mine in the Book Cliffs, which they say threatens to devastate land, water supplies, and the climate.
Protesters making their voices heard in Detroit. Today's rally, just the latest outcry over water shutoffs in the city.
But this time it's different. 10 people were arrested. Fox News' Mario Liu talks to a local pastor who was hauled away in handcuffs.
Pastor, were you arrested?
I was. We were blocking the entrance. Their security vehicle attempted to inch its way in and kept pushing on people, so we sat down.
Blocking the East Grand Boulevard entrance to Omrick Wrecking Incorporated, the private corporation with a 2-year, $5.6 million contract to shut off residential water service to customers with hefty past due bills.
To disconnect water from people who cannot afford to pay is a violation of human rights. And we wanted to make sure that Omrick understood that, as well as, of course, the emergency manager and the governor. 10
protesters were arrested. The oldest was 75 years old. They delivered Omrick drivers copies of a recent complaint filed with the United Nations on behalf of Detroiters. Protesters say these large corporations need a little neighborly empathy.
A family that I serviced just yesterday that had been living a year without lights and water. This is literally a jungle out here where people are surviving however they can. People are being placed in worries. Seniors cannot drink the water to take their medicine.
Miko Williams works for the Detroit Water Brigade. They're providing relief to families living without the most basic human necessity.
We've been delivering cases and jugs of water, water coolers. We also have supplies such as water filtration straws and aqua tablets so that it could change the quality of the water within 30 minutes and it can make it safe and accessible to drink.
Police eventually disbanded the protest and demonstrators who were arrested were eventually released. None facing any charges, but they're promising you haven't seen the last of them yet. Is this a cause you're willing to be arrested for again?
Absolutely, and we're seeing this as the first in a series.
We reached out to Omrick Wrecking, but didn't hear back in time for this newscast. The Detroit Water Department maintains they have to find a way to balance the books. But for those of you living without water, there is help available. We've put a link to that information on our website, myfoxdetroit.com. I'm Marielle Liu, Fox 2 News.
With the world watching, Detroit's water war is reaching a boiling point.
But there are people out there making a fast buck on a crisis, and they are putting the city's poorest at risk. Action News reporter Ronnie Dahl, exposing the scam tonight, joins us live from Detroit's west side. Tell us about this, Ronnie.
Yeah, you know, they sell themselves as guys just wanting to help you out. Your water's been turned off, and for just a few dollars, they'll help you out, turn it back on. But I'll tell you what, these guys are not Robin Hood. They're only looking out for themselves. They just want to make some quick cash. And if you buy into their scam, it could cost you as well. On a recent afternoon, our cameras are rolling as crews with the Detroit Water and Sewage Department go to work, shutting off water to homes of customers with past due bills. When they are finished, another crew of sorts arrives with an offer. What they do, just come by and say, hey, want your water back on?
Follow behind the water truck and pull up and ask you if you got $50, they'll turn it back on.
Did you pay them?
No.
How often do you think this is happening?
Daily.
Greg Eno is with Detroit's Department of Water and Sewage.
For a recent 3-day period, for example, just prior to the 4th of July weekend, we had about 300 suspected illegals. And out of those 300, about 200 were found to be indeed illegal.
Sure enough, it didn't take long for us to spot these two guys on Whitcomb Street, outside a home where the water was recently shut off. We are recording as they use a makeshift turnkey to get the water flowing again. As they are finishing up, we turn the camera on them. Hey, are you guys with the water department?
No, I didn't even know.
Oh, it's not on? Oh, come back here now. You guys have some explaining to do. Busted, they make a run for it. One across the street, the other into the house where they were just turning the water on. A short time later, he comes out, hoping we are gone so he can leave, but we're not.
Oh, I can help somebody out. That ain't even matter, so.
But who are you helping out?
It don't even matter.
Well, I mean, do you live here?
No.
Do you live here? No? So are you guys going through the neighborhood and turning it back on? Come on, talk to me. You're gonna be on TV. In the age of the internet, we found websites demonstrating how to turn the water on or off, and water turnkeys can be found for sale on sites like eBay and Craigslist. But Greg Eno wants water customers to know these scammers aren't Robin Hoods wanting to help. They are out to make a quick buck, and customers will be left owing more.
They're only in for it for themselves, clearly. And the people who think that they're having a favor done for them, when we find out, and we will, are going to get a very nasty a letter of a $250 fee added to their bill, and they're not going to be very happy.
Back on Whitcomb Street, guess they realize I'm not going away so fast as our guy decides to make a run for it. You can't keep outrunning me.
Hey, I can help the people out, so.
So who are you? Are you charging?
No, I ain't charging, woman.
Where'd you get the turnkey? You forgot your friend. He's back there. So we don't know if he ever did pick up his friend. We want to let you know what they are doing is illegal. If they are caught doing it, they are going to be prosecuted, facing numerous charges. If you are paying them to turn on your water, those fees may start at $250, but they can easily go up over $600. It's not worth it. Take that money that you would pay them, put it towards your water bill. If you need assistance, we put that information on our website, WXYZ.com. For now, we are live in Detroit. Back to you.
Well, crews are cleaning up the mess that was left behind from a fight near Montrose Beach last night. Some cell phone video here of the brawl shows bottles and other debris being thrown at police officers there. One officer was struck with a bottle. He's in good condition. Another was also hurt, but he refused treatment. Let's get more on this from Eyewitness News reporter Jessica D'Onofrio.
9 men are behind bars, and police say they'll be charged with things like mob action and aggravated battery. The fight broke out in this grassy area right behind me, and unfortunately, 2 police officers got hurt. Chaos at Montrose Beach and a massive fight. Beer bottles flying everywhere as hundreds gathered for an illegal party. Jasmine Mejia shot this YouTube video of the melee that left at least 2 Chicago police officers injured.
It was a complete riot. Honestly, the cops were just walking by, and, there's people that were intoxicated, obviously, so they're going crazy, saying random things at the cops, yelling, throwing things at them, and it all went chaotic from there.
The gathering was billed via social media as the Tamborazo Beach Party, featuring music. But the fun turned into a gigantic brawl just after 7:30.
The melee out here in Stonnybrook, man. Large crowd, some with guns throwing bottles at the police, damaging police cars. We have an officer that got hit with a bottle. He's bleeding. We're over here by the park on the other side, closer to the beach.
2 officers were hit by bottles, but they're expected to be okay. In the end, 9 men were arrested and the park was evacuated.
Get all the policemen out of the park now. Okay, all police are to leave the park at this time. All police leave the park.
Chicago Park District officials say they did not issue a permit for the event, and city crews spent the morning picking up the trash. Meanwhile, neighbors are still reeling from a shooting that happened on Montrose Beach just after the Pride Parade 2 weeks ago. 2 women were shot and seriously wounded. But Mary Beth Nesbitt says she still feels safe here.
You have to know where you are and always be alert. But would I stop coming to the park? No. No, and I hope families won't.
We reached out to the organizers of the party, but were unable to get a hold of them. Reporting at Montrose Beach, Jessica D'Onofrio, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
A protest over the shooting death of a teenager by a sheriff's deputy took a tense turn this afternoon.
The large crowd marched onto Highway 101 in Santa Rosa and came face-to-face with officers in riot gear. Brian Webb in the newsroom with what's adding fuel to their anger. Brian?
Well, 2 things happened this week. We learned the deputy was cleared of any wrongdoing and that he'll be back in uniform any day now. That's created a lot of tension on the streets of Santa Rosa that seems to be growing stronger. A protester took a camera along for the afternoon campaign calling for justice for Andy. About 100 people marching down Santa Rosa streets, shouting and carrying signs. At one point, walking through a crowded Macy's store while chanting and whistling. Then spilling onto a highway and blocking traffic. That's where protesters met police in riot gear. All this outrage came out of a decision by the Sonoma County DA this week. After an 8-month investigation, she decided the killing of Andy Lopez was tragic but not criminal. The 5'2", 13-year-old was carrying a toy gun that looked real when Deputy Eric Gelhaus shot him 7 times, killing him on the spot.
The implementation of lethal force was a reasonable response under the circumstances.
That announcement caused an outcry from activists, sparking 3 days of protests in 1 week, with accusations ranging from racism to claims the DA is letting the deputy get away with murder.
The kid carrying a toy gun where kids play.
What our DA is literally letting these cops get away with murder.
Today's protest was the largest this week and lasted almost all afternoon. But there were no reports of major damage and no arrests, and no word if and when protesters will hit the streets again. Andy's parents have filed a civil suit against Deputy Gelhaus. The next action on the books for that case is set for August. I'm Brian Webb, KPIX 5.